Hello, everyone. This is the lecture for Module 5 on alcohol. This is part 1 of 3 lectures on this topic. Mm. The lectures will discuss introduction to alcohol as an intoxicating substance, its absorption and elimination in the body, the acute effects and chronic effects of alcohol use, and some information about both the use and misuse of alcohol. This lecture will focus on the first of these 3, and then the subsequent lectures will address the remaining 2. So some general info about alcohol. It's a substance that's created through the fermentation process. So sugar is dissolved into water, yeast is added, which then eats the sugar, and the carbon dioxide that rises to the top, that's a byproduct of the yeast, is ethanol or alcohol. That's how wine and beer are created. Distillation is another way to create alcohol, and that requires heating up a fermented mixture and then cooling the vapors. So heating it to the point where it starts to steam and then cooling the vapor and collecting that liquid. And that's how hard liquors are manufactured. All alcohol has a proof, which is a descriptive element of the alcohol. So half a proof is half the number. Proof is twice the percentage of alcohol in the substance. So half of the proof is the percentage of alcohol. So for example, 80 proof liquor is 40% alcohol. There are many different types of alcohol. Excuse me. Let's go back one. There's ethyl alcohol, which includes things like beer, wine, whiskey, etc. This is the only consumable alcohol. It's the only alcohol that can be ingested. There's also methyl alcohol, which is made from wood. It's an ingredient in formaldehyde, and it is not consumable. You cannot ingest methyl alcohol without severe toxicity. Isopropyl alcohol is another type, and that's also toxic. Only 8 ounces of isopropyl alcohol can kill a human. Isopropyl alcohol is also rubbing alcohol. There's butyl alcohol, which is created from beets, and that's used in the production of film. And denatured alcohol, which is alcohol combined with methanol, which is used as a solvent for different machine processes. So when people talk about drinking alcohol, often the question is, how many drinks did you have? How many drinks are you going to have? How many drinks can I have per hour to stay under a certain limit? But what's tricky about that is what we consider a drink, like a glass in a beverage, is not necessarily a standard amount of alcohol that's in that glass. So there is a way to talk about alcoholic drinks in terms of standard drinks. And what that means is that you can look at a certain amount of a bunch of different types of alcohol and say that they all have the same amount of alcohol in them. So for example, a 12-ounce can of beer, a 4-ounce glass of wine, and 1 shot of hard liquor all contain the same amount of alcohol. And so that would make a 12-ounce can of beer, a 4-ounce glass of wine, and 1 shot of liquor a standard drink. And so whenever there are guidelines or scientific studies done or information given out about alcohol, and they say X amount of drinks means this, they're talking about this standard drink, not just whatever you happen to drink in a single setting. This is anecdotal information, but an old family friend was a big drinker, and he would boast and brag about how he only had 1 drink a night. And I happened to be over at one night that he was making this drink for himself, and it was a cocktail of whiskey and ginger ale that he made in what was essentially like a 24-ounce thermos. So yes, he only had 1 drink that he drank, but there were several standard drinks in that drink itself. So that's an example of how there's a difference between standard drinks and what some people consider to be one drink. So alcohol is easily absorbed in through the body. It's ingested through. It's consumed by drinking it usually, and it's absorbed through the stomach and the small intestines, like most things that enter through ingestion. About 20% of the alcohol is absorbed within the stomach itself, and then the majority of alcohol gets absorbed through the bloodstream via the small intestines. It also absorbs more rapidly in the small intestines. That's because once it gets through the stomach, there isn't anything in the way of absorption. In the stomach, there are two factors that really affect absorption. One is just the physical presence of food in the stomach slows down the absorption of alcohol, and also the number of drinks per hour. And so, again, thinking about those standard drinks that I talked about a moment ago, um, alcohol has an interesting quality, which is that you can ingest alcohol quicker than you can notice the intoxicating effects of alcohol. This is called a latency. So if someone were to take several shots in a row, they might walk away from that experience looking normal. But then after maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so, boom, they get hit with a major intoxicating effect of drinking that much alcohol. And that comes from this latency and the way the alcohol is absorbed. So again, the most powerful influence, the thing that affects alcohol absorption the most, is whether or not there's food in the stomach. Um, so it dilutes the alcohol in the stomach, and it slows down the movement of alcohol from the stomach into the small intestines, where there's a quick absorption and the bulk of absorption happens. So if there's food in the stomach, it slows down the digestive process of that alcohol. Um, so, I mean, this is how significant of an effect it has. An empty stomach can have blood concentration of alcohol 3 times higher than that of a person who has eaten. And that's a person who's drinking the same amount of alcohol. Um, so food in the stomach is a major factor in how quickly it's absorbed. Um, and then also more concentrated forms of alcohol, higher proof alcohol, is also absorbed more quickly into the bloodstream. Alcohol moves through the body pretty quickly after it's consumed, and it moves kind of all over the body once it's in the bloodstream. But at least at first, the concentration of alcohol in the brain is higher than the concentration in the blood. And so, if you're doing like a sobriety test or you're taking a blood test, um, your blood alcohol level might not be reflective of how impaired you are because the concentration in the brain is higher. So you can take a blood reading of blood alcohol content and have it be lower than the impairment that someone is feeling in their brain. And so typically, the first sensation that occurs from alcohol intoxication is a mental impact. That's what someone notices first before any kind of physiological or physical impairment. Um, so alcohol absorption is also impacted by body type. So people who weigh more and people who have more body mass can consume a greater amount of alcohol than people who weigh less. Both fat and muscle is absorbing the alcohol out of the bloodstream. And so people who have more fat or more muscle will not experience will experience less intoxication than someone who has less fat and less muscle. Um, the 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 tricky part about this is that people with more fat and muscle also experience longer retention of alcohol, meaning it doesn't eliminate from their body as fast as people with less amounts of fat and muscle. So it doesn't just affect absorption, but it also affects elimination. Um, and then alcohol is something that does transfer through the bloodstream to the fetus of a pregnant woman. So if a person consumes alcohol and they're pregnant, then alcohol will transfer through the umbilical cord into the fetus, and this can have many really negative effects, including the fetal alcohol syndrome, which comes with a variety of medical complications after birth. So, how alcohol is eliminated is it's metabolized through the body. So, 95% of what is consumed is metabolized. The other 5% is eliminated, and so it leaves the body through urine or the lungs. And so the rate of elimination is constant, meaning that once alcohol is consumed, it's eliminated at the same rate across time. And so, because it's eliminated through the urine or through the lungs, a breathalyzer can detect alcohol because that relies on the exhalation of alcohol molecules through the breath. Most alcohol, though, 95%, is metabolized in the liver. And so, what that means is that the liver is processing the alcohol. It takes the alcohol that's ingested and it turns it into another substance before it breaks it down fully. And that other substance is what leads to intoxication. That's why people feel drunk. So it actually converts the alcohol that's ingested into another form. That's what has an intoxicating effect on us. It's also what can lead to other symptoms. So not just feeling intoxicated, but also feeling sick or nauseous. And because of this process in the liver, too, drinking more alcohol means that the liver is going to ramp up the amount of enzymes that are available to break down alcohol. And those enzymes can also impact other medications and break down other medications. And so you can get a development of cross tolerance, which means that other medications that are broken down by similar enzymes are going to be less effective for someone who's a chronic drinker than for someone who isn't. And I've noted here add blood alcohol contact information blood alcohol content information. I actually have that on a slide later, so we'll talk about that in a moment. And stick around for part 2.